Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. It could be argued that Humza Yousaf and his ship of fools that call themselves the Cabinet could be likened quite easily to the Muppet Show. However, the Muppets would be seen as competent, intelligent, wise, entertaining, value for money, and above all, not a complete joke. They're professionals in comparison with this bunch. But this is the bunch we have, and they don't like being asked questions. One of the problems we have, of course, is scrutiny. And this particular bunch of clowns have refused media approaches on over 60% of the time. They don't like being questioned because they have no answers, they cannot think for themselves on the spot, and they are quite incapable of doing their jobs. Indeed, some have already been fired from previous posts for complete ineptitude. And yet this is the ruling cabal that Scotland is supposed to put up with and admire from afar. These are your leaders, these are your betters, and you better get used to it. Let's take a look at this article to see why these particular Muppets are ill-suited for their job. Here goes. So Hamza Yusuf accused of evading scrutiny as his cabinet refuses over 60% of media requests. The new First Minister's cabinet was described as being full of flops, and this has been showcased by them dodging media scrutiny by rebuffing requests for interviews. And you only have to look at them. All of them are useless. You have a Justice Secretary who wants to avoid juries because they give the wrong decision. You have an Energy Minister who only yesterday says he's not in charge of energy. You have Shona Robinson, who has failed in everything. She has no concept of anything that she's doing. All of them, every single one of them, is a complete failure. So it's no surprise that the big failure, the chief clown in the front picked them. But they're all unswervingly loyal to him. And that's, for him, all that matters. There's no talent. There's no talent in that cabinet. Anyway, Humza Yousaf has been accused of copying Nicola Sturgeon and continuing to preside over a secrecy-filled government after it was revealed that his ministers have turned down more than 60% of media requests. In other words, they don't want scrutiny. They don't want to be asked the sort of difficult questions that would embarrass them, either because the answers themselves are so appalling and utterly terrifying that they don't want the public to know, or that they're actually so stupid they don't know the answers and they don't want people to realise how stupid they are. Well, I'm going to say it's far too late for that. I think the general public know exactly how stupid they are. It's not a secret. It's one of the few things in the SNP that is not a secret. His new cabinet has already been slated by opposition parties for being full of cronies and flops, and including those who have failed in previous government roles. Well, they're led by a man who's failed in every role he's ever had. He included a number of his closest allies and two members who were sacked for being incompetent and offensive. Joe Fitzpatrick lost his public health job for presiding over record drug deaths, and Gillian Martin did not even get to spend a day as minister under Mrs Sturgeon after her offensive historic tweets were unearthed. So you have these people, one certainly incapable of doing the job, and another one who's so offensive she had to be fired, and that's under Sturgeon. And Sturgeon put up with all sorts of awful people. So how bad do you have to be for Sturgeon to fire you? It's honestly, it's like schoolboys, isn't it? It's absolutely, it's incompetence. It's this group of honestly, imagine you take the Marx Brothers and the Three Stooges. That's what you're dealing with here. They're clowns. Every single one of them is a clown. Anyway, and now the Scottish Daily Express can reveal that 3/5 of media requests for government ministers to discuss their brief with journalists have been turned down. Not surprising though, is it? According to statistics, between March the 30th and April the 10th, 87 requests were made by media organisations for either specific politicians or a general MSP. But 54 of these were rejected, with only 17 accepted. 13 of them are still pending, and 2 were withdrawn and 1 lapsed. This means only 38% were actually accepted. It has been a tough start to life for Mr Yousaf as First Minister, as he has faced a baptism of fire. Well, to be fair, life is hard when you're stupid. The financial probe into his party has been ratcheted up a gear with police raids on the SNP HQ and the home of Peter Murrell and Nicola Sturgeon. He's also faced accusations of being out of his depth and incompetent by the public and opposition critics, and has been forced to U-turn on a number of key SNP policies like the deposit return scheme and alcohol advertising. He would be out of his depth in a puddle. The man has no concept of what's going on around him. He doesn't understand concepts. He doesn't understand protocols. He doesn't understand the laws of cause and effect. He says things without realising that they have consequences. He really needs to learn about consequences. And that is why so many of the things that they've imposed initially, or announced initially, have since been delayed, been reversed, been cancelled. Because all of a sudden, you know, the ideal world that goes on inside their heads has come crashing to a halt when it's smashed into the hard face of reality. He has employed a cabinet full of his allies, with only one member not supporting him in the brutal leadership campaign where he narrowly defeated Kate Forbes. This has proven to be a thorn in the side, as those chosen ministers have failed to set the world alight. Well, they are not capable. They're all stupid. They're all failures. You've got a failure in the form of Humza Yousaf, who's chosen a whole series of failures to be his cabinet. How do you think that's going to work out? There have been a number of gaffes and failures being recorded, including Transport Minister Kevin Stewart describing the ferry fiasco as not brilliant. Justice Secretary Angela Constance, who's under fire for leading controversial justice reforms which would axe the jury in some cases, is one more of the impossible to speak to ministers, as she's rebuffed 8 attempts at interviews and accepted none because she knows, and of course she's got the purple hair, just in case you were unaware. It's always the purple hair brigade, but she wants to get rid of jury trials because, damn those juries and the way they let people off. Because the prosecution fails to deliver the goods, fails to provide adequate proof that there's no reasonable doubt. How dare the prosecution fail? So obviously, rather than blame the prosecution, just get rid of juries. That tells you all you need to know about her. And Mr Yousaf received most requests for interviews, fending off the likes of CNN, CTV, a Canadian broadcaster, and Swedish National Radio. Opposition critics have blasted this secrecy. Scottish Conservative Chairman Craig Hoy said Humza Yousaf's cabinet colleagues clearly plan to follow his continuity approach when it comes to the SNP's culture of evading scrutiny. They cannot have scrutiny. As I say, either they come across as stupid, but we already know that, or the truth might come out, and they can't have that. But while it once must have been puzzling that they turned down so many media requests, the more we discover about the party's murky affairs, the more their addiction to secrecy and dodging awkward questions starts to make sense. Scottish Lib Dem Willie Rennie said Humza Yousaf claims to be more transparent, but is hiding like a scared rabbit. The SNP are in a state of decline, and hiding from the media proves it. Yeah, I mean, if you are, if you're successful, if you're striding forward, if you're doing great things, you're out in front of that press. You're saying, "Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're planning. This is what we've got lined up. Look at the results of the thing we just done." But that isn't happening with the SNP. They're guarded. They're secret. Because everything they've done has been a failure. They don't want to highlight their failures. Everything they do is verging on the criminal. Everything they do is done with morons in charge. They don't want to expose their stupidity. They don't want to expose their criminality. And they certainly don't want the truth coming out. So it's no wonder they refuse to be scrutinised. And then, just look at that lot there. What a bunch of morons. What a bunch of losers. You can go along and go, evil, stupid, moron. Who the hell knows what she thinks? That one on the end, probably a moron. On the front row, another moron. He's a knob. I mean, in charge of energy, and yet not in charge of energy. You don't even need to say anything about Humza Yousaf. Shona Robinson, my God almighty. I mean, talk about thick and totally incapable of doing her job, and then a non-entity. What a bunch. What a bunch of losers. And you know who's paying for it? Scotland. It's sad. I shall round off and come up. Hamza Yousaf chose these people. Now, to be fair, there wasn't a great big pool of talent available in the SNP to begin with. But having alienated half the party, he's halved his choice of those, first of all, willing to work with him, and second, who were in any way capable of working and doing a professional job. So obviously he couldn't find anyone that fit both of those requirements. There's really no one in the SNP that is fit to govern. None of them know what they're talking about. They're all fools. They all live in a world of secrecy, guarding each other's backs. There's no openness. There's no transparency, because they all know exactly what they are and what everyone else around that table is. They're fools. They're incompetents. They're obnoxious. They're hate-filled individuals who've been thrown together because they've all kissed the ring of Humza Yousaf. But none of them are any good. And Scotland is paying for this. You split the party. Hamza Yusuf has split the party in order to make a point, I think. Well, the point's been made. Now grow up, admit you're wrong, and do something about it. But when you have people who have been given briefs and then will not talk to the press, will not be open about those briefs, the question is, why? And the question, of course, is obvious, or the answer is obvious. It's because either they're too busy lying, or they're too busy covering up the truth, or they're just not capable of answering the question without looking like fools. What a way to run a country. Anyway, I shall finish there. Thank you very much for listening. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and make sure that these buggers are held to account every single day. Bye-bye.